Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all the nerdy things we love about them. Joining me this week, we have Logan Wilkinson.
How you doing, Trevor?
Doing okay. We have Cameron Abbott.
Hey, what's going on, nerds? Let's crack open a cold one.
Oh, God damn it, still. At least when we were at PAX, he didn't have that going for him.
I know.
And then
right?
we have Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Good. How you doing, Trevor?
Good. I'm doing okay. So this is basically a missing episode recapped effectively since our initial attempt last week of discussing all of the games we'd played at PAX East 2020 got lost. The file got corrupted and we couldn't salvage it. Cameron spent most of the week trying and was just to no avail. So apologies for not having an episode out last week. That's what was going on there. We were trying to fix it and save it, and we just couldn't. So what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of do an abridged version of that original podcast, which would have been 2 hours and 45 minutes. So at least you're saved from that, dear listener. And we're going to kind of talk about our daily highlights from PAX East, so we can still talk about the games we played and you know, what we enjoyed at PAX. But we might not dive into, you know, every single game. We ultimately had played, I think I had the count of 47 games, so nearly 50 games at PAX across the five of us. Christian also is not here because he only had played a couple games, so didn't want to worry about making him sit through another 2 hours talking with us about it, to only kind of chime in here and there. So that's kind of the game plan for this episode. If you like what you hear, please remember you can like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast everywhere you can. If you're feeling extra generous, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like Teresa Wilkinson did, our newest patron. Thank you to Logan's mom, who
Hi, Mom.
we thanked in the missing episode as well, but that is lost to time. And then also a special shout out to our Patreon producers, James L. and Jason Bellevue. Thank you for your support, guys. So yeah, let's just kind of dive in with some day-by-day highlights. We still have kind of our full list of games here, so even if we don't talk about it, I might just throw in oh yeah, and we played this, but blah blah blah. But I'm going to talk about I'll kick things off with my day one highlights. So this would have been that Thursday. And the first one I want to talk about, I can talk about with Frank as well a little bit, is Animal Crossing. Frank and I both kind of hit that during the media hour, I think. We rushed to get that game in since that was going to be one of the busier ones of the show. I've got a full preview written on the site, and Frank and I already have kind of a 10 to 15 minute video conversation about the game as well. So we won't go too deep into it, but it's Animal Crossing. If you like Animal Crossing, you're probably going to like this game, but you might not like it multiplayer-wise. At least that was my takeaway. I did the demo was set up as a 4-person multiplayer, and did not really... your experience varied wildly, as I think we kind of discovered based on the Nintendo representative that was leading you through the demo, but overall, you just have so little control as a follower that it wasn't something for me. How about you, Frank? Anything to add?
No, I completely agree with all that, and I think really the best way to say it is more Animal Crossing, but it is graphically it's beautiful, and that they definitely I feel like nailed everything they're going there with the island vibes, and honestly too, it seems like there's a lot of quality of life improvements for Animal Crossing fans who've been playing for a while. But like you said, as long as you're the leader, if you're follower in multiplayer, you're kind of that's definitely not the best way to play that game.
Yeah. So you can go check out kind of more in-depth impressions on the game over at thatnerdysite.com. Like I said, a write-up from me, and then also a conversation from Frank and I is available on the youtube.com/thatnerdysite. Up next, Cyber Shadow is a game I played, but I think Cameron wanted to talk about this a little bit more than I did in terms of highlights, because this is a game I had played at PAX East last year, shortly after it had been just announced that it was going to be a newly published from Yacht Club Games kind of game. It's a Ninja Gaiden-esque action platformer. Anything to add, Cameron?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to play both the introduction level as well as a level through the game where you have a lot of unlocks. I will say there's a lot to unlock in the game from what I saw at the midpoint. But I will also say that what's really great, and so it's important to know, like you mentioned earlier, this is being published by Yacht Club Games. They are not the developers. Because what Yacht Club Games has done is, with Shovel Knight, they took kind of modern, modernist approach to game development, but with a more classic 8-bit kind of design aesthetic. Cyber Shadow feels and plays like a game from back then, from like the Genesis era, like an old ass Genesis game. So when it comes to that, I would say if you are looking forward to that, that's great. If you're looking forward for a game that has the option to duck, you will be disappointed.
I mean, it might be an unlock you might get down the line. You don't.
Oh my gosh, but that's the last one you get, like right before the end boss. Like he's like, you now have the ability to duck.
Your knees work. Haha. Yeah, it's. I mean, it is very much a throwback. I compared it in the last attempt at this episode to something like The Messenger, but I think kind of touching on what you'd said, The Messenger did more to modernize what that kind of game could feel like compared to this that is very much harkening back to that old school style. She Dreams Elsewhere is another game I played from Studio Xavier, I believe. Basically a one-man studio. I had seen this game at the Kind of Funny Games showcase at PAX West. It kind of got shown off there. It's very much an RPG in the style of Earthbound or Persona or Undertale. And talking to the developer, it was really cool. He's been working on this for 4 years. He's only like 22 years old, so he's been working on it since he was in high school, basically, in RPG Maker. And
shout out to the real ones.
Yeah, it's got a very particular aesthetic in that most of the game is in like black and white, but he does use like pops of color to, highlight imagery or just the psychedelic battles and stuff. And he had described to another one of our friends, I think, that was purely by accident. He like accidentally hit a filter that kind of turned everything black and white, and he was like, "Oh, I like this. I like this better." So he kind of kept with that. And I had talked to him and asked him what the biggest change over the 4 years he's been working on this was, and he basically talked about how it's gotten it's become a much more personal story for him. He when he was starting out, he just kind of wanted to make a generic RPG, and has really delved into kind of his personal fears and goals and dreams, as it were, as he's kind of worked on this project. Hoping for it to come out later this year, and there is a demo available now on I think on Steam. I think you can basically get the prologue of the game, which was pretty much what was on the show floor, I believe, available there. Last one I have for day one is Wasteland 3. This is another one. I've got a preview for this and a game I'll talk about in a little bit up on the website. This is very much like harkened back to kind of old school PC gaming for me. Not even old school, but just like my past as a PC gamer. It feels very much like XCOM, and it's got darkly comic kind of moments in it in terms of like it's XCOM meets classic Fallout. So there's dialogue moments where you're interacting with characters, and you can kind of choose your own adventure in terms of how the story's going to play out there. In particular, in my demo, we were supposed to bring this guy in alive, and when we finally got to him and had our conversation with him, it was like, okay, how do you want to approach the thing? And there were a couple things I couldn't do because I didn't have the right the skill check to pass, lying to him or whatever. I tried to lie to him about saying that there were like more people outside, that it wasn't just my squad, and he basically called me on my bullshit and then somehow accidentally blew himself up. So I kind of failed the objective of bringing him alive, but I found out after the fact that like, oh no, he could have joined my team, he could have joined my party or whatever, and kind of the story would have played out completely differently from there. So cool little mix of XCOM and kind of action RPG narrative elements to that. So and it's coming to Game Pass because In Exile Entertainment, who makes the Wasteland games, is one of the studios that got acquired by Xbox a couple years back. So it's like, oh, I might check it out there since I have Game Pass. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. So that was my day one. Gonna throw it over to Frank to talk about some of his games. Frank, looks like you and Logan at least want to discuss Dunk Lords. Tell me about Dunk Lords.
Yeah, so this is a like an arcade style kind of like basketball game, similar to I guess honestly like NBA Jam, or I think we were even comparing it to like NBA Street.
NBA Street and
And
Info Blitz kind of style. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's definitely, but like I think it's a such just they nail like exactly what they're going for there though, and it just seems like it's a super fun, quick, really fast-paced like multiplayer game, and I really just want to play more of it in the future. I don't, I guess it's like hard to say more because it is just kind of like basketball with like some superpowers thrown in, but I mean it's really fun to when you sit down with it and actually get to like play around with it.
I think for me, yeah, there's elements of NBA Street. One of the game series that one of the developers we talked to actually mentioned was like the backyard sports games as well. I think you kind of see backyard basketball and those kind of vibes in it as well. It's super fun, arcade game. They're very short, they're very quick, so you can kind of get back in and play through the match like again and again and again. I think it's kind of a very easy game that you'll probably see us stream whenever it comes out. Me and Frank really enjoyed our time with it, and in terms of this is a really fun video game experience. It's absolutely near the very top of my list of games I played at PAX. Just pure fun of what it is.
Nice. All right, Frank, tell me about Skate Story.
And so yeah, this is what game I still wanted to highlight because like it is still really early into development, and like graphically there isn't like doesn't seem like there's a ton going on at the moment. But I thought it was really cool because you're basically skating through the different levels, kind of like Tony Hawk style. But there's a narrative story that is based on the story of Morpheus. So you're descending further and further into hell. So I like that the levels you're kind of going downhill and doing tricks and avoiding obstacles, but you're actually going further and further into hell itself. I thought that was really cool. So I'm really curious to see where this goes in the future.
Nice. That reminded me. In the week since coming home from PAX, I had a dream or some kind of a fever dream. I don't know. Since we'd all watched Brink at PAX, go check out that
Skate better.
Plus show. I think it was actually spawned. Maybe it wasn't a dream. It was just spawned by one of those like Twitter questions of like, what kind of game or movie franchise would you want like turned into a game or whatever. And I was like, there should be an E3 trailer where it's like Tony Hawk isn't coming to save you, but Eric Von Detten is. It's Brink.
Yeah.
Skate better. And it's just like the whole cast from Brink comes back in video game form. So that was something I wanted to highlight and share here. But yeah, go check out that D Plus show where we talked about Brink last week. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, we had a good time there. That was one of the other highlights of PAX, certainly for a lot of us, I'm sure. So Hindsight 2020, Frank and Cam, I know you guys both have some stuff to say about that, so tell me about that game.
Yeah, so go ahead, Cam. No, I know you have more to say about it, so go ahead.
Okay. So Hindsight 2020 is a really cool game. It's made by and being developed by a new studio called Triple I Games. It is they are a group of developers from BioWare and Sucker Punch, respectively, and they are putting together a game that put out here that it is a very cool action RPG that stars Jahan, who is a one-armed, just total badass who is in a position to make choices that will radically change his world. And rather than living in a paragon or renegade good or evil choice system, every choice is just within that realm of gray and falls through a spectrum. Concepts like ideas like justice and mercy, revenge, ruthlessness, mercy. Like, these are themes that are just very prevalent in the demo, much less what the rest of the game is going to be. And it is valued about it's about 4 to 6 hours, depending on how much time you put into it. But because of the significance of all the many choices, no single playthrough, unless you make the exact same choices every time and do everything exactly the same in the world, because it's not just dialogue choices. Sometimes the choices that you make in combat also come back to haunt you. So there's a lot going on there with that. I really enjoyed my demo with it. I think that it is a really cool approach to something that we've seen a lot of before, but we can definitely, it's definitely going to stand on its own.
Cool, Frank. Anything to add?
No, I completely agree with pretty much everything Cam said. I'm glad that like Cam and Christian were both kind of talking about it, so I'm glad I went to go check it out. And like the demo was really awesome. I was really impressed by kind of everything Cam said. It's really interesting, all the different things they're doing there, and a lot of like the choices do even apply to actual gameplay where you can kill or leave people alive, and then all that matters. And I think like all that's going to be really really cool in the grand scheme of things. So I am excited to see kind of more of that game in the future as well.
Nice. This is one you guys did a more in-depth conversation, right? We don't have it uploaded yet, but it's out there being worked on still.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I did forget to mention, but yeah, I am working on that one at the moment, and so that should be up in the next few days, if not even, by the end of this weekend here, by the time like people are hearing this.
Cool. So yeah, keep tuned to that nerdy site for more on Hindsight 2020. All right, going to throw it over to you, Logan. Tell me some of your highlights from day one.
Yeah. So for me, the first game I played at PAX actually, or at least non kind of press hour game, was the Red Lantern that our friends at Papa Gender are doing PR on. And the Red Lantern is just it's a video game that was so much more and so much different than I thought it'd be going in. It is a story of kind of a young woman kind of having some sort of trauma or personal difficulty happen in her life, and she kind of decides that she's going to go to Alaska and take part in the Iditarod race, the dog sledding kind of competition. And it kind of turns into more of a like roguelite game than I kind of initially anticipated, more of a kind of a survivalist game. The kind of crafting mechanics, do you go hunting or not go hunting, you have this many supplies, kind of balancing act that is inherent in the game, is mixed with what is actually a really engaging, I think, and really promising story of like her journey and her arc as she's practicing, things kind of go awry and she gets lost in the woods. And then couple that with the fact that her team of dogs each have their own, like apparently kind of personal narratives and arcs, and all kind of have their own different kind of quirks and personalities and characteristics, and will interact with the kind of the various animals you see differently. It added up to, I think, one of the most surprising games I played at PAX. Certainly one of the most visually like impressive. Like it's very much like there are shades of Firewatch in this game. The kind of landscapes are beautifully rendered, and the person I talked to during my demo was the kind of lead like environment artist, and it is just gorgeous. Like there are moments where you go back to kind of your base camp and it's overlooking essentially a valley, and like whenever the sun rises or sunsets, just kind of this golden rays kind of hit you. It is just easily one of the most visually impressive things I saw during PAX East. It's a really neat game. It's really cute. I only got a tiny glimpse of the narrative of the game. The overall package, even, there's still so much I kind of questions on and want to see further. And so, I'm excited to see more of the Red Lantern, but what I played definitely kind of had me very intrigued and very excited.
Yeah, that's another one. I sat down with you and we recorded a video with some more in-depth impressions. I don't know what the timeline on that one getting out will be, but it was one of those. I'm like, I'm pretty sure. Like a lot of that week is a blur, admittedly, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure I sat down with Frank early on, or with Logan early on, and we just discussed this game for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Keep an eye out for that. And are you doing a written preview on that as well?
What I'm thinking of doing is actually kind of a written wrap-up of a few of the smaller games I did, and so that will be on that one for sure.
Okay, cool. And then the other one that you have for day one, we do already have a video out there that people can go check out with our friend Jarrett Green from Irrational Passions. You and Jarrett both played Doom Eternal. Tell me about that.
Doom Eternal's Doom. It's fantastic. It's fast-paced, fluid. I think one of the things that I really liked about Doom Eternal more than 2016's Doom is I think it really is kind of leaning into making each kind of room you're in a mini puzzle and kind of unlocking how you kind of fight certain enemies, certain like weapons and skill sets kind of benefit them. The balancing act of being low in health but needing to fight to get more health. I think it's just a very clever game, very cleverly designed. Visually, it's just stunning. I mean, there's a moment again I talked about before where like you'll basically are holding somebody's head, and just all of the kind of veins and like sinews and everything about it are just like so perfectly like captured. The only kind of thing I have is like, we'll see about this. is, again, kind of the platforming elements. And as you kind of mentioned in our first kind of recording of this, you've heard way more positive things about it later on in the game, so maybe me and Jarrett just kind of had an earlier build where they're still kind of establishing that mechanic. Right now is much more of a transition into another room kind of thing.
It's one of those things that you can use the platforming really well in combat scenarios, I think, if you're like used to it and practiced in it. But if it is just kind of like trying to get from point A to point B, it might not be as intuitive or as
and that's what it is.
As enthralling.
I think part of it too is the fact that like Doom is very much a game that like doesn't hold your hand. So like when me and Jared we talk about it later, like on our recording, where we each got to the same point where like we first have to platform, we each just stood there for like a minute and we're like, what do I do? Like it's like you don't jump across things in Doom. It's like, all right, we're looking for like the door to smash with me with that, and it's like, where are we supposed to like? It wasn't made clear when it started what you were supposed to do at all, and so it kind of took a minute to like figure that out. But like once you did, you just kind of get back into the ring of it all, and Doom Eternal, I think, feels great. Like, again, it's just a great, I think, example of why Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal seem like at the forefront of first-person shooters kind of right now in gaming.
Yeah. Cool. Before I throw it real quick to Cameron, I do want to highlight one of the games that we've kind of pulled from the highlights reel, in that Cameron also played Final Fantasy VII Remake at PAX, but then the day after PAX, Square Enix released an even better demo that everybody could play. So we scrapped kind of a video that we already had of Cam and I talking about it because I'd played it back at PAX West. So like, bottom line was Final Fantasy VII Remake, real good.
Yeah.
But you can play more than we did now, available for free on your PS4. So didn't really seem like there was a point to continuing to dive into it now that it's out there for the masses. But go ahead and tell me the other games you played on day one there, Cam.
So on day one, I played. I stumbled upon the Kana Quest booth in the PAX Rising section. And only thing I'm going to say about that is it's a really cool way to practice kind of like a flashcard mentality of exercising your kana, which is your Japanese vocabulary. I'm sorry, not vocabulary. Consonants and vowels and how they work together, both in hiragana and katakana. We actually have a review copy that is... we'll have a review coming out for it. So stay tuned for that. Theo, who is the developer, has been working on it for about 3 years. Really cool guy. Really cool stuff. So you'll see more from that later. Then I played Black Skylands, which is a top-down kind of tank control-like shooter where you are basically a jetpack wielding airship flying, traversing through these islands that are populated with monsters and like bandits, and you're just clearing out the place, and it's really cool. I played only maybe 5-10 minutes of it, but really looking forward to more of it. It was at the Tiny Build booth, so it's one of their games that they're putting out. Then I played Liberated, which is a really, really cool game. I have written a piece going up for it soon, and it is a graphic novel like aesthetic approach to games like Shadow Complex or Strider, where you're kind of like traversing an area, side-scrolling it, but the interaction for side-scrolling is less of physical and more of like taking a tactical approach with firearms and other tools. So really cool stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're good.
Yeah. So the last one we want to talk about here on day one to celebrate ended up actually being kind of our site-wide game of the show that all four of us played. This is another one that Logan has a great preview piece up on the site already for. And it was Fall Guys, a new game being published by Devolver Digital that is effectively a battle royale, but in the form of game shows like Wipeout or Takeshi's Castle or MXC, where you start out with, in the demo we played, it was starting out with 60 people, but I think they're still aiming for 100. And you basically go through 4 rounds of mini games that kind of weed down the field until you get one champion at the end. And so they're going to have at launch at least 30 games is what they're targeting. We played through 4. That's kind of what they had in the demo, and it was a ton of fun. We all kind of made our way through. Frank unfortunately got eliminated in round 2, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. Anybody want to talk about kind of the different round structure of the game?
Yeah, I will. So it's really cool in that it's a great way of weeding down. So you start out with 60 people in the build that we were playing through. And the first challenge is literally just a race to a finish line. And you have to go through a series of wall challenges where the challenge is basically dumb luck, run through a wall. If it doesn't let you go through, it's a real wall. If it lets you go through, it's a fake wall. Keep going. Some strategy gets involved in that where you can kind of let people go ahead of you because the goal is not really to be first. The goal is to just not be part of the last portion.
Yeah, it was that whole mentality of if you're being chased by a bear, you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was I very much did that in round 1 where I was kind of lagging a little bit behind the pack just to see if I was far enough behind that if somebody ran into a wall that was going to stop them, I could pivot and find the pass-through wall. And yeah, that was kind of my strategy for it. I was never trying to be the first one at the wall.
Second structure, the second game is the one that let me think here. Was the second one the tail one?
Second one was Tails, yeah, where Frank got eliminated.
Yeah, Frank got eliminated in the tail. So basically half the
got
people started
screwed
off
over.
with... He got screwed over so bad.
Yeah, Frank, yeah, you can tell this one.
Yeah, Frank, talk about this one. Yeah.
All right. So I thought this was cool at least before I got fucked over during this one. But I thought this was a cool round where it's it drops all the remaining players who were still left from the previous round into this circle arena, and there's a spinning hammer in the center, and I think there was a couple on the sides. And some of the people have tails and the rest don't. And the objective, if you don't have a tail, I guess the main objective is just have a tail when the timer's up. And I had a tail for, at least from my perspective, I had a tail for 90% of that. And then the developer that we were talking with was oh, there's actually this strategy where if you go to the center and you hide at the right angle, nobody can get to you because the hammer will be spinning around and kind of knocking them away. So Cameron and I went and we were hiding in the center as though we were waiting for the time to run out. And this other NPC character just ran up and John Wick style, slid under the hammer that was swinging and grabbed my tail and leapt off the platform. And when I tried to follow him, I got hit by the thing and got knocked out of the arena, and I totally just lost the rest of the time.
Yeah, that was the developer on our side was not giving Logan and I pointers or anything like that. But
Nope.
But that was in that particular map. I was running around. I had a tail going for a little while, and then that big center hammer that was that could do a lot of damage and kind of send you flying sent me out of the arena while I had a tail, and I was like, "Oh, sweet! I'm fine with this. Don't respawn me. I have a tail. I will advance to the next round." But then it did pull me back in eventually. And yeah, I was. I had a way more back and forth in my demo where people were getting tails from me, and I was having to get back from them. Because I wasn't trying to camp like a little bitch, I guess.
Hey! I didn't start off with a tail. And I was in the pack of people trying to get tails, and when I got one, I did what I had to do to keep it, okay? Not all of us were born in that round with the privilege of a tail, okay?
I started the round with the tail, and I kept it the entire time. And let me tell you, that 90 seconds is among the most tense 90 seconds of my entire life. In particular, the last 20 seconds where I was so convinced something would go catastrophically wrong. I was terrified. I was so just gripping the controller, I'm going to get taken from me with 10 seconds left, and then I'm just going to get screwed over, and I just can't have it. I just don't want any part of that in my life.
That is a sweaty round. That is a majorly sweaty round, for sure.
Yeah.
I also
I'm realizing... Oh, go ahead, Logan.
I also just want to go on the record and say that like I won the wall jumping through challenge in the first round. So
you were the first one through?
I just want to put that
Nice.
on the record. I was, yeah.
Well done. I'm realizing it would have been a way more interesting story if I had come back in and just completely lied and been like, yeah, and then like 5 seconds from the end, I jumped under the hammer and stole this tail from this guy.
Oh, that would have been so good. That would have been so good.
But alas, no, I'm not the one that screwed you over there, Frank.
I think it's worse because I think it's just like an NPC,
Yeah, it
and
was
like
just- it
the
was like
developer was like, the NPCs are stupid, go for them, and I'm just like, no, this dude was John Wick, like.
He watched it happen too. He goes, "Wow!" Like he's like, "That doesn't happen." Like,
Yeah.
he's like, "It's not programmed to be." Like, he almost said, "Like it's not programmed to be able to do that," but clearly it is. Like clearly, there's like one AI out there that for like 10 seconds,
Sentient
is just,
AI, yeah.
like it. You know that moment in the Matrix where like, somebody can like get out of the Matrix for like a split second. They see like the machinery around them. It was like that. That AI did that.
The AI saw the code.
Yeah, I saw the code and was like, "Oh, this is real. These are real people. Oh, I'm sentient," and then no longer sentient.
Yeah. So that was round 2, and round 2 basically, yeah, I think it started with like 50-ish people and basically whittled it down to half. So round 3, we were down to 24. We got split into 3 teams of 3. There was a red team, there was a blue team, and there was a yellow team. And it was basically like Hungry Hippos, where there was a whole bunch of eggs in the middle of the arena, and again like spinning hammers and obstacles and stuff. And the objective was to get the most points back to your team's kind of corner. And like there were golden eggs that were worth like 5 points each. And so we began. I struggled at the beginning because I didn't realize you had to hold the R button to pick to hold the eggs. I was just like pushing it, tapping it to pick it up, and then like kept dropping eggs. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Finally realized, oh, you got to hold it. So I was off to a little slow start. But I finally started getting some eggs back in, and then like looking at the scores, it was like I was on the red team, I think. Yeah. Like blue was like in the lead, and then yellow was kind of like lagging behind, and I was like, well, like about halfway through is I think when people started realizing we could steal from each other.
Yeah.
So like I just immediately started heading over to the blue team's like camp and started stealing like the gold eggs from them. So
I noticed.
I ended up getting
I
like
was like,
10
wait,
points out of blue into red for my team. And yeah, I think like all 3 of us, I think, advanced in that round. I think we were on a mix of blue and red at that point. So just as long as we weren't on Team Yellow, that was the only team that did not advance on that one. But yeah, it was another fun little mini game that added like a weird teamwork element to it. So this like I was realizing as we were playing it that this had to be scratching so many of Logan's Survivor itches, because it's all of the mini games from Survivor kind of stuff as well. And then lastly, the kind of final round there were 16 of us left at this point, was kind of another race, but this one was a race to the top of a mountain. I likened it to the aggro crag from Guts, the old Nickelodeon show, the old Nickelodeon show Guts, where you're just trying to race to the top of the mountain. There was a crown kind of floating up top that once you got to the top, you had to basically time your jump appropriately and grab the thing. Again, you have hammers that are kind of like swinging around that'll knock you back or knock you down, and you'll lose, precious seconds in your climb. There were giant spike balls that were coming down. There were like paddles and stuff. So it was basically another obstacle course kind of thing. And freaking Cameron beat me by like a half second or something like that. The camera spun around when he won the thing and got his little crown, which I'm sure you were aware, but you left in the hotel room.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. I was not going to be able to like. That thing would have been torn apart in any of my bags.
Okay, I was like, it definitely wouldn't have taken up space. So,
Well, yeah,
I figured it was
yeah.
intentional that you were not bringing it with you. But yeah, Cameron won a little foam crown.
I don't need a crown to know that I was better than you guys at it.
I mean, okay.
Anyway, day
kid.
2. Yeah, I was gonna say.
But yeah, so Fall Guys, we all had a ton of fun with. Some of the things that they're toying around with but don't have any kind of firm plans for right now are, once you are in spectator mode, they might add something where you can kind of interact with the game, so that you're not just watching along. But even if you are just watching along, the whole thing took us, maybe 15 minutes to go through that whole thing. So the battles are very quick, and then you can kind of go in and start a new game. So it was a ton of fun. It's going to be a great kind of approach to the battle royale genre that I think is going to be a lot of fun to, like, not only to play but also to watch, because you can kind of have just a great time, like, crapping on your friends when they lose the tail and get knocked out by a hammer and stuff. So yeah, that was day one, and because we all had such fun with that kind of set the tone for us in terms of what our game of the show would be, and ultimately as a site-wide kind of thing, that was what we decided to give our game of PAX East to, was Fall Guys. So shout out to them, shout out to the team behind that, and Devolver Digital Publishing. It was a ton of fun. So diving on to day number 2, I played a couple games, but the only one I have 2 that I want to highlight. A real quick one I'll shout out is If Found. I didn't have a great time with it, but our friend George Cruz Alvarez over at Irrational Passions did, so I encourage people to go check out his written preview for it. Just didn't really scratch the itch for me, but the one that did, and the one that I ended up giving my game of the show to, is a game called The Artful Escape that I know Logan and Frank also enjoyed. Yes. The Artful Escape is seems to be, based from like the gameplay so far, a pretty basic platformer, but it has a beautiful art style, it has beautiful art design, sound design, and what really won me over in this was kind of you step out on this planet and you're kind of tasked to go. You're an intergalactic rock star or something, and you've been asked to go find this jazz club and go play, a performance at the jazz club. It's like, okay, cool, whatever. And then you just start kind of platforming across this 2D landscape, alien planet that's just like enthralling to look at. And it's giving you the kind of the tutorial of like, press A to jump and blah, blah, blah. And then it gives you press X to shred. You press the X button, and an ethereal guitar comes out, and you just start rocking out electric guitar. You can kind of keep pressing X. Eventually you get to a point where you can hold X to shred with the environment as lights and water spouts start like shooting up into the air, and it just becomes this weird like little rock show that you're playing as you're platforming across the world. You can do like a double jump, and then you can like shred to give yourself like a little extra boost in the air if you need to like hop through a thing. It was just a very cool experience. The way I described it when I was kind of making the initial pitch was somebody played Journey and was like, this is a really cool game. What would make it more epic? Electric guitar. and that's kind of the vibe I got from it. It's definitely not as, at least from what we played, as emotionally resonant as something like Journey is, but the just kind of in the design and the landscape of it, and the just kind of chill nature of the game, that was kind of what I found. The other like main gameplay component is a mix of like Simon Says kind of, and again, you're still kind of making music, but in Simon Says follow the prompt kind of quick time stuff. So anything to add, Logan or Frank?
Yeah, for me at least, the Artful Escape is really, really great. Like I loved my time with that game. Like it clicked with me on such a level. It's probably one of my like 3 favorite games of PAX East. That kind of always kind of keep bumping up and down, which one I like the most. It's great. Like I think the press X to shred. I think the music itself is so well done. I think just visually, like it is just a like kaleidoscope of colors and like shades and sounds, and it's just like an awesome rock concert that you play basically. I love the fact that it's like set in like another world, so they can get really crazy and fun with like kind of the animals and creatures that you see. Like Trevor and Frank's kind of big critique, for lack of a better word, is balance of like, I don't necessarily know what the full game is going to be, but what I played as a demo is fantastic, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah. Frank, anything to add?
No, I completely agree with everything you guys said, and then kind of like Logan highlighted there, like kind of like our biggest kind of worry with it, or just wonder, is kind of like how far, do you kind of take that concept? But I'm definitely on board. Like I love the art style, I love the music, at least from what I saw. It seems really fun, and like everybody knows I'm a huge Annapurna fan, so I'm just, I guess I'm hooked already.
Yeah, it clicked for me in a way that Sayonara Wild Hearts didn't. But it feels very similar. It has a similar vibe to Sayonara Wild Hearts for me in that regard. But where Sayonara Wild Hearts, I was trying to chase like a high score, was kind of the meta game that I was playing. The fact that I wasn't trying to do that in this, and I could just really enjoy the minor platforming and the music, made this so much more of a fun experience for me. Where I didn't feel the pressure to try and like do something flawlessly or perfectly. It was just kind of like I can press X to shred, or I can just kind of run through, but it's way more fun to just press X to shred.
And do you think the music style in the Artful Escape is a little bit more up your alley than like Sayonara Wild Hearts, or like would either of you guys think that?
I mean, I love the soundtrack of Sayonara Wild Hearts. It was really just the gameplay that took me. Like, I love Sayonara Wild Hearts as an album. I didn't like the game behind Sayonara. It was my bigger issue with that game. This like honestly, I don't think of myself as like a hard rocker, so that's one of the reasons that Artful Escape surprised me, is that like I was vibing with the electric guitar that you're kind of just rocking out to in this. But yeah, there might be an element of that where it just might have clicked better. But for me, I think it really does come down to just the differences in gameplay there. How about you, Logan?
I mean, I love rock music, and I love like the electric guitar as an instrument. Like it definitely vibes me, I think, musically, but it also just is a game that again just clicked in general. And like I do think it'll get more complex in terms of platforming. I do think that we'll use the guitar in really clever ways. Like I think I'm more excited to see the final product, because I think it will be something really cool. But even if it is just basic, it is Journey with that electric guitar. Journey's great. Give me electric guitar. I'm down for that ride. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the final product looks like.
Yeah. Last game I had to talk about on day 2 was a game called Stronghold Warlords. There's another one. I kind of did this as a joint preview with Wasteland 3, where I talked about kind of both of those games taking me back to when I played much more PC gaming. Stronghold Warlords is a real-time strategy game, very much akin to your Age of Empires type of activity, where you're building up a settlement and kind of resource management and sim management, and then you're building up an army that you can go take on and kind of attack kind of the enemies on the map and stuff. The thing that Warlords is doing in the Stronghold franchise is the whole Warlord system that they've introduced is kind of gives you a few AI leaders on the map that you can kind of bring into the fold. Either you or the opposing warlord can kind of use obedience points to basically request fealty effectively. And they'll give you, resources, or they'll give you extra units or something like that can be used in your fight if you bring them into the fold. So it's really cool, but it didn't. I did not successfully complete the 20-minute demo, because these are the kinds of games that I spend way more time over preparing for. So I would have spent another half hour building up my like economy in my little settlement before even trying to dive into combat against the enemy. But to get it out on the show floor, I get that they had to kind of really move people along by doing an abbreviated timed demo. So, but I had a lot of fun with it. It's definitely something I'll keep an eye on as it comes out later this year, hopefully. So that was my day 2. Logan, tell me about yeah, I guess Frank, you only have the one game on day 2 here, right? Season. So tell us about Season, because you really liked Season.
Oh yeah, man, this was definitely my game of the show. This is the one of the games that I was just like walking around and definitely just kind of got pulled into, and it definitely seemed like something I think would be up my alley. Like it's really beautiful, so immediately the visuals kind of captured me there. And then they were like, yeah, it's a narrative kind of like adventure game. We're just trying to tell a really unique story. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely here for this. The I guess I do want to do a larger like video preview on it, so hopefully people will be able to check that out pretty soon. But the kind of the soft pitch on it is that you're kind of a girl from a faraway land, and you're sent to our world as it's ending. And the goal isn't like, typical like video game style or anything where it's like, oh, save the world, figure out what's happening. It's really just like, no, the world is ending. This just happens. But you figure out like what makes humanity special or what you value in humanity and bring it back to our world so we can like preserve that for like future generations and like put it in a vault. And then like the way that's told just through like all this environmental storytelling is like what I think really makes it unique. Like I think it's an interesting story, but the way they're telling it is what really kind of captures me. And the way you're just like documenting in your journal and filling out your backpack and all the items and all the things you're learning is just based on like the decisions you make and like what you like, it's really what you value, and what you think is interesting. So like I'm really curious to see how this game is going to turn out, because they said they were going to try to do it episodic, and the first episode's supposed to release by the end of the year, maybe like December. So I'm hoping to see like how this game turns out, because I think it could definitely be something special.
Cool. Logan, you played this one as well. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I love Season. It was one, like Frank said, that he spent a lot of time talking and pitching me on, and I kept wanting to get to it. And then on the final day of PAX, I finally managed to kind of swing around to check it out, and it's beautiful. I think that I got less Journey vibes than Frank did, and I get something almost more akin to a like What Remains of Edith Finch, or like Giant Sparrow type game, or Brothers to the Two Sons. It is incredibly beautiful, quiet, I think, filled with kind of understatement, I think, current of melancholy and sorrow, but mixed with like this really potent, I think, almost like hope for the world, right? Like it is kind of these two juxtaposed cultures kind of clashing together, and getting to kind of document and write down the story of this village, this community, is very poetic. I think the final 10-ish minutes, once you meet like the old man is all I'll really say, of the demo, final 10-15 minutes of that is among maybe the best thing and my favorite thing I played in all the PAX, or right up there. It is sad and filled with sorrow, filled with hope, filled with the kind of angry, yelling at kind of the sky. And I think it's such a brilliant encapsulation of like a man at the end of something and how he kind of reconciles himself with that. It is just a beautiful video game. I'm very excited to see the final product. We won't get it for a while, but what we have here is something that's really, really great and really special. I wish you had gotten to play it, Trevor. I think you would really have vibed with it as well. But it is a great game and easily, near one of the tops of what I played at PAX.
Yeah, one of the things that, because I swung by the booth a couple times and nearly played it, but one of the things that actually like almost pulled me away from it was, I think it was very interesting. It was just something I wasn't really eager to take part in and would have felt a little pressured to do, was that because this was such like an early build, they were like, they were giving people like forms and asking for feedback, right, Frank?
Yeah, they were. I didn't like actually fill out the form, but I did talk to them, and they kind of asked me the questions, and like I think took down my answers. But I think they had like pretty much, we're giving as anyone who would take it, like they were giving them like the form or like the questionnaire.
Yeah, it was like I saw people filling that out after having played, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to do like homework after this. So,
I literally bounced. I was like, I don't want to do that. I talked to him and then just left. I was like, no.
Yeah. It's I just I was like, it's cool that they're trying to get that feedback and incorporate it and stuff, but I would have felt too pressured to try and do it like right then and there. So that and there was just also a line every time I swung by, and I was like, I don't want to hang around too long, but based on how you guys have described it now in the 2 versions of this podcast we've done, it definitely seems like something I would enjoy. So I will definitely keep an eye out on it, and hopefully play it somewhere down the line. Maybe they will be at PAX West.
Yeah, hopefully.
I really hope so, because even if it's the same demo, I would just play it again and I would just make different choices.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think the artwork on it is like stellar and beautiful. So
Yeah, it's very beautiful.
Yeah, and so the last thing I would mention about that, because I know we do want to move on, is like so it's in Unreal 4, but they took out like all the shaders and all this other like the stuff that's in that engine. They took it out and they built their own and like put it in the engine. So there's no game that looks like this. This is literally the only game that has this art style.
Nice.
And they have people doing the shadows by hand.
Cool.
Yeah, and then
yeah.
I also wanted to say I also played the Force Cathedral.
Yep.
And yeah, that's also a game that I think very kind of similar to Red Lantern, which will be included in kind of the same preview write-up. Surprised me. It's by Brian Wilson, I believe, who also did Where the Bees Make Honey. And again, very strong Firewatch vibes to it, except for you're basically set in like a forest, in like Oregon instead of I think Montana, Wyoming.
I was gonna say, like, except you're set in a forest. Well, that's exactly.
Yeah, that's
Firewatch
right. That's why I added
vibes.
it. But it's very cool. It's about the story of like the woman who discovers like the DDT and pesticides in like the 80s, I believe. And it's very much a kind of like thriller, tense vibe. I think again, very strong Firewatch vibes to that as you kind of unfold the mystery. The demo I played is about halfway into the game, he said. And one I think the kind of big calm points of Fourth Cathedral is that it switches between 2D and 3D. I don't know if it's to its benefit or not. I think the 3D sections are very strong, which is where a lot of like the narrative is taking place, and a lot of kind of the thriller, tense vibes are occurring. That narrative is super engaging immediately. Even like the probably half the demo I played is set in 3D, so like out of the 15 out of 30 minutes are set there, I was engaged. I was hooked instantly. I wanted to know more of Rachel's story. I wanted to know more of what was happening, and just kind of the unsettled nature of it all, and just her voice too is very unsettling, and deliberately so, he said, when he had the voice actress record her lines. Everything about it just drew me in. Whereas the 2D sections, I think, are still need some refinement. The build I played, he said that he still needed to kind of tweak some of the jumps, some of the distances, because they were brutally hard. He kind of self-admitted that there were some that were almost impossible, and just like perfectly nailed it. And I definitely felt that playing it. It is not easy, the 2D sections, and it's not supposed to feel like that. I think also for me is the fact that the 2D areas and sections are good, but I think they require... It's just jarring, right? Like, I think in any video game, like where you have a really taut, tense, narrative-focused 3D game, and then slap on a 2D, very basic platformer, it becomes, well, this is a very different game. This is like, you just kind of lose all of the narrative, you lose all of everything else, and essentially think of the 2D sections as almost akin to the hacking sections in the original Bioshock. Like, you're basically opening things up, but doing it via like a 2D platformer inside of like the console. And it works in the sense that like it's adding time to the video game, which he kind of admitted is like why they're kind of in there, is he wants to make the game a bit longer to kind of justify the price. But I think it feels like that at times. So I hope as he kind of further develops the game, because it's still early on, he plans to kind of release it like for next gen consoles and for PC like sometime next year, that maybe as he kind of goes to more shows and he kind of gets his own kind of internal feedback, he kind of refines it and either tightens up the platform sections, kind of cuts them back a little bit, or just finds a way, I think, to incorporate them into the overall narrative better. But what I played in terms of the actual narrative is great, engaging, and yeah, I'm curious to see how it evolves.
Cool. All right, Cameron, take us home on day 2 with the games you played.
So the games I played on day 2 were specifically from the start. Let's go ahead and start with Those Who Remain. Those Who Remain is a really cool rural Pacific Northwest kind of first-person adventure game where you are very much just like very Stephen King, Twin Peaks inspired kind of environmental horror that is less about the idea of like scaring you and more about making you feel. Have you ever been in I would put it this way: if you've ever been in a situation where the tension of the atmosphere around you is leading to you making decisions like that, you just like you feel that tenseness, like that constant tenseness, or like in a horror film where like that kind of tension that you're feeling before what you know something is going to happen, except instead of it being like that setting up for like a jump scare, that's just the entire game is that. So I enjoyed my time with it. I'm really looking forward to the full game because I think it has an interesting story to tell. And I had a great time with it.
Okay. Deliver Us to the Moon.
Deliver Us to the Moon is like one part astronaut simulator, and the other part is kind of like a adventure game. I'm really curious to see where it goes because the demo is literally just launching yourself to the moon. The setting takes place in a near future apocalyptic setting where essentially all of Earth's resources have pretty much gone to nil, and we started bringing in resources from the moon to kind of adapt to that. But like 20 years ago, contact with the moon was shut off. Like we don't know what happened. It was like blackout, and Earth has kind of been in decline ever since then. So you are on a essentially suicide do or die mission, flying to the moon to figure out what happened and how to reach these people if they're still alive, work with them to like basically turn the orbit elevator back on to start shipping helium-3 back down to Earth to save it, or if not, then to try to figure out what to do if they're not alive to try to like figure that out. So don't know which one it is yet, which is cool. I'm excited to see more of it. It's currently out on PC already, but it's coming out later this year on consoles.
Cool. Until You Fall, I know you and Christian filmed some video for this one, so we'll see if that ends up getting edited together. But tell us about Until You Fall.
Until You Fall is a really, really cool VR game that is essentially like if you were to take the kind of interaction that you have with a game like Beat Saber, but instead it's Infinity Blade. So instead of doing things to music as you're swinging like lightsabers, you are instead are in a kind of Infinity Blade looking fantasy world where you are kind of like going through this. It's a roguelite aspect. Like they weren't able to tell me if I was wrong, but I think it might be the first like VR roguelite in your approach to it, because the goal is basically to go as far as you can, die, go back, level up your stuff, then go back and try it again. And it is just a fun time. There's what's really cool about it is they are using two different modes. One is a standing mode where you like do have to do like your movement and like to avoid stuff, and it's really more focused for being more active. But then they also have a sitting mode for people who for accessibility purposes, or just personal comfort. So the mechanics on moving and dodging and blocking work differently depending on which mode you choose. And it is just a fun time. I had a great time with it. Christian said it looked like it was fun when I was playing it. We also, I don't know if it'll work comedically, but there might be a little fun intro piece to it. We'll see what happens. But
yeah. It looks like there are a handful of other roguelites out on VR, so it's probably not the first one, but
well, there we go.
Does sound like a cool, engaging approach to kind of that. Like it seems like a more interesting roguelite than I typically would hop into. It very rarely do those kind of catch me because I just don't like not feeling the progression. But at least this, you got kind of the active component to it. Yeah. So let's wrap up with Wintermoor.
Wintermoor is a really cool game about like a group of kids who are at a boarding school in the northeastern United States, so it has like a very much like a boarding school vibe to it. It kind of gives off like this impression that there are these kids who are basically at this boarding school, and they are just having the time of their lives. They're in high school, and it focuses on the clubs at the school, in particular the Warfare Tactics Club. The Warfare Tactics Club is essentially a D&D group. The intro to combat, and I didn't get to play further into the game as far as combat goes, but their introduction to combat is very much focused on like how things work in D&D and kind of introducing the fighting mechanics in their game. But the premise of the game is essentially you all find out all the clubs are gathered in the auditorium, and you're told that there's going to be a snowball tournament. And in order to make sure that the snowball tournament is competitive and people are invested in it, the only club that gets to remain and not be permanently disbanded is the club that wins the tournament. All others will be permanently disbanded, never allowed to regroup. So the nutjob crazy headmaster is super funny, but also kind of like weird in a way that's just like he's done stuff that's injured children before and hasn't been removed from his job despite the fact that he's clearly insane. And it kind of delves into like the idea that there's a deeper mystery going behind Wintermoor Academy. And
I was gonna say, so he's like Dumbledore.
He's like Dumbledore, except instead of it being like I'm an old timey wizard man, you can trust me. Like I'm like a grandfather. It's like he does this thing where like in his character portrait, he'll have like his very stern looking face, and then it'll switch over to one where he's like throwing his hair back and like putting up a peace sign, and like flower power like effects come off of him, and it's just like what in the world is this guy? Like what in the world is this place? And you dig into it, and it's really cool because there is the diversity level is like up to a 10 on this game. Like there are so many different kinds of kids, different kinds of clubs. There's a club that's called the Young Monarchists, which is kind of a take on Young Republican, Young Democrat clubs at schools. What they are actually for the support of returning things to a monarchy. And they're total like D-bags, and they're your first opponent in the snowball tournament that you unfortunately don't get to play in the demo. But it's, from what I saw, the writing is fantastic. The characters are terrific. Even like the D&D characters where you have sorry, the characters are so great, but there's one character especially, his name's Jacob, and his D&D character is named Rogue Guy. Because he's a rogue and a guy.
I think I gathered that.
Yeah, he's just it's so good. On like a very like really cool, funny level of like very aware of what kind of a game it is, but at the same time really embracing kind of the idea of adolescent adventure. So
yeah, you've got a larger conversation with Frank on it too.
I do. Yeah, I forgot about that actually. There we go. Yeah, I didn't have to go into that much detail for it then.
Well, that is day 2, and we're about an hour into the show, and already like day 1 in the original podcast was an hour itself. So we're already at significantly better pace this time around. So let us dive into day 3. First thing I played on day 3 was a game called Mayhem in Single Valley. It's another tiny build game. It is a Zelda-like, but instead of kind of going around and attacking and hacking and slashing creatures, you're basically trying to avoid them because you're not really like you're a bit of a thug kid, but you kind of like to keep to yourself, and you don't really like. You're not confrontational, and so what the premise of the game is like a radioactive spill happens, and basically all the little forest woodland creatures in the town start turning into like radioactive zombie creatures like squirrels and rabbits that'll start attacking you, and they start attacking like all the other townspeople, and you just have to try and avoid them. You can like shake a tree and acorns will drop, and you can use the acorns to lure the squirrels. You can pick carrots, and you can use those you can like either pick them and leave them there, and they'll kind of the rabbits will go to them, or you can like stock them up and then you can throw them as like bait basically. But then other than that, you're kind of solving some puzzles, and I was the first person, the first press person at least at PAX to have completed the demo. So the guy was very impressed with me. But the admittedly the potentially weirder thing was that Tiny Build was basically like I showed up for the demo appointment. They're like, so Tiny Build is weird. And basically, you're going to go in there, and we've got like a couple massage chairs set up. And so they can massage you while you play the game, or they cannot if you're not cool with that. And I was like, I'm going to go ahead and pass on that. So
massage chairs as in like vibrating chairs, or there's a person massaging you, Trevor?
A personal massage chair. So I basically was sitting they removed like the headpiece thing, but otherwise I would have been like face down into the thing playing. I was like basically playing on my knees kind of thing. It was a very weird configuration to be playing a game on, but whatever. I made it work. And then they gave me a bathrobe at the end, and a big orange scarf. So Tiny Bill is weird, y'all, but
They're so weird.
The game was cool. I liked the kind of different take on the Zelda type of game, where I was trying to avoid everything and not get into fights because I didn't have any tools, any way to win those fights. So it was just a matter of like run away from everything. And then the other one that I played on day 3 there was Ghostrunner. And this is another one that Frank can talk about as well. And we will probably have some kind of video piece up because I know, Frank, you did an interview with the developers on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the creative director.
There you go. Ghostrunner is basically Hotline Miami, but in Mirror's Edge, where you're running around kind of first-person parkour type of thing. Or Katana Zero, I think. First-person Katana Zero is how a couple of us have also started describing it. Because you're basically like a cyber assassin ninja or something like that. You have a blade, and you can run on walls. Halfway through the demo, you get like a grapple hook that you can use to kind of traverse the environment. Really cool. I was really bad at it, but it never felt like the game was cheating me. It just felt like I was bad at it and needed to think more strategically. And part of that is taking the Hotline Miami approach and putting it in first person. You don't see the enemies that are behind you, but they're going to be shooting at you just the same, versus like Hotline Miami or Katana Zero, where you have like a wider scope, and you're able to see more of your surroundings, so you can basically prepare in that regard. So it was a lot of fun. I didn't finish the demo, but I almost got to the end of it, and it felt really rewarding when I finally had that run where I was able to kill the 5 or 6 people in an arena that had been killing me for the last 5-10 minutes of the demo. But yeah, the most impressive thing for me, I think, and I think something that you go into in your interview, Frank, is how quickly it was in respawning. For as much as is going on in that game, being like a big 3D first person action game, the fact that like you die and then you can immediately respawn back in and restart the area felt really impressive to me. Frank, anything to add?
No, yeah, I completely agree with pretty much like everything you said, and I'm a big fan of a lot of the games that you mentioned that this is kind of like, or that we kind of get the vibes from in Ghostrunner, and I just I had a great time with it. Like I love the cyberpunk aesthetic. I love that we talked about in our interview too. We talked about the music. Like I definitely enjoy the music, and I think it just fits the theme of everything you're kind of doing when you're just running around. And I don't know if you put the headphones on for your demo, but like I was definitely like I was locked in and just running around like the sides of this billboard, slicing people in half, like listening to this synth music.
Yeah, I was finding myself getting very tense, and like I would get closer and closer to the screen as I would die, and sometimes the headphones would just like start to fall off, and I'd have to like reposition because of how physically I was getting into the game as I was attempting to complete a good run or something like that.
And like I definitely and I totally feel you there too, especially because like you said, it's so great when you do finally like nail it, especially because like that room with like that's like you get to that room that has like 5 or 6 guys, and I think that's like the most people you've encountered at that point, and yeah, they just kicked me in the face for like 10 minutes. and then I just like finally you just have like a run where you basically like defeat them all or kill everybody and you have a great run and it's awesome. And then like I went into the next room and then my demo crashed and I was like, oh dang.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I talked with the dev about was I just a lot of like the controls are not controls I'm used to. Like jump was on the right bumper or something, and I'm not a bumper jumper kind of player. So like it's something that I would probably explore remapping the buttons in my eventual playthrough. Because another thing I was really bad at trying to nail and lock down was you can like slow down time or almost freeze time when you're in midair. Like when you're in the middle of a jump, you can basically hold one of the buttons to slow down time, but because everything else is like tap the button to do the thing, I always was tapping that button as well, and so like slow down time for like a split second, but then it'd go back into normal time and I'd be shot or something like that. So it was a mechanic that I was unable to master in my brief time with the game, but it's something that I think will make the game easier when you can get a good grasp on it. So anything else to add on that, Frank, or do you want to dive into your next game?
Yeah, no, well, I'll be happy to dive into the next one. This is the
All
same.
right, tell us.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, tell us about PHOGS then.
Yeah. So this is the same day. We pretty much, I think, like not too long after I played Ghostrunner, we had my appointment and we went over and played PHOGS finally. And like I was definitely interested just based on like the weird pitch of the game or seeing the one trailer because basically the easiest way I can describe it is it's kind of like Cat Dog, but like it's a two-player co-op game where each person has like controls one end of the like the dog, and you're trying to complete like puzzles. And at first it's like pretty basic stuff, or like we like kind of did that hose puzzle where like we connected to a hose and kind of like use it at like one end to like spit water on something and then we can keep advancing. But like I really like that, like how crazy it gets by the time you get to like the dream world at the end. And then like I always keep talking about like that rowboat and how like the visuals just get like really beautiful. And like I don't know, like I think that's something like I was really interested in with PHOGS.
Yeah, Logan, you played this with Frank. Anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I think it's a fun multiplayer game. Very Cat Dog inspired, I think. It's silly and goofy. I want to see more of it, right? Like I think it could be a fun game to kind of stream and play together. I have like questions on some of the stuff, but in the end, what we played was a ton of fun. Surprisingly, like more puzzling, and like you have to kind of actually like think about some of the stuff more than I thought you would. And yeah, just it was a good all around experience, I would say in general. Ton of fun.
Nice. Yeah, it's one that I first saw I think last year at PAX East. I think Ben and Chloe and Ava had played it, or like some pairing of those people had played it at East last year. And so when you guys were like, "Yeah, we're gonna play it at this one," I was like, "Oh, cool." It's one of those other games that most of that nerdy site has sat down and played. So tell us, Logan, then moving on to one of your games from day 3, another one of your games from day 3, Skyhill Black Mist. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this will be the third and final game on kind of the big preview wrap-up I'm doing that I'm currently looking to get live in the next few days, or today or tomorrow next when you're listening to this. And yeah, it's an interesting one. It's very maybe Hitman Go-esque is a good equivalent kind of thing, or it's kind of like that kind of top-down view. I have so many questions about this game. It's set it's very like sci-fi inspired. They're like kind of these black misty creatures, hence the title of the name, like alien things that you're kind of trying to like fight or avoid. The police are also after you. I'm not sure what. And then it's kind of all this larger mystery is kind of mixed in with a Groundhog Day scenario where you're essentially living the same day over and over and over again, right? Like every time you die, it just restarts the day again, basically. And like all of that's kind of cool and like very mysterious, and like I love that. And like want to know more. I don't know if I will learn more, but I want to know more. The gameplay itself is fairly basic. Like you just kind of walk around, and again confront people, avoid the people, kind of go through this larger building where the entire game takes place. I played on 2 different floors in my demo, and yeah, it's made by a Polish studio. It's neat, it's weird, it's quirky. It has approximately 500 menus, tutorial things pop up, yet weirdly doesn't explain what is happening at all. So again, I still have a lot of questions about it, but what I played is interesting and unique, I think. And I just always love every PAX going to kind of the Polish studio kind of kiosk, for lack of a better word, I guess, a stand, because they routinely have some of my favorite games at PAXs. Liberated is another one that like I very much have my eye on, or my memory of us from 2017, 2018. Like they just constantly do really great things. The various kind of Polish studios that are represented there, and this is another example of one that at the very least intrigued me, has me curious, and you can get kind of more thoughts in the coming days.
Okay. Cameron, take us home on day 3 with some of the games you played.
Yeah, so on day 3, I had a pretty busy day. I think every day was busy for me, actually. So I played Welcome to Elk, which was my game of the show. Welcome to Elk is a Dr. Seuss-like artistic, like the artwork and game, like it basically it's like a Dr. Seuss book brought to life, but with like really great poignant moments of humor and friendship and hilariousness, and also bleak dark tragedy that can just strike you at any moment. And at the very end of the demo, I had to like take a few minutes to compose myself. It brought me to tears. Like this, it's a really well built design game. There's a video I think that I think Logan, you and I talked about it.
We sure did.
Yeah, that'll be going up with it. Really awesome game. Just absolutely brilliant game. As far as like just the kind of like design aesthetic and the kind of game design around it, and just it's a game about telling stories in a very unique and fun way. So
cool. Yeah. Anything to add, anybody?
I mean, I also played it. I think what Cameron said, that last sentence in particular, I really like. It's a way to tell stories. I think in a very different and unique way. It's very all over the emotional spectrum. Is kind of goofy and silly and absurdist, and also incredibly bleak and melancholic. It's a very different game experience than a lot of what we'll play. So yeah, it's very unique.
Cool. All right, then tell us about the Shovel Knight games you played, Cam.
Well, I love Shovel Knight, and man, oh man, am I excited for what Yacht Club Games is putting out, because Shovel Knight Dig is a much more, like the take on Shovel Knight Dig is not drastically different from standard Shovel Knight, but different enough where instead of side-scrolling and platforming, it's much more about the descent into areas below you and kind of like the unknown, and like it's randomized every time, so it feels a little bit like a good mix of like Spelunky or a like any one of those kind of like randomized dungeon to crawling games in that genre. Very good. Really enjoyed it. Really can't wait for the full game. New knights that you get to fight as bosses, and they're cool designs. And then Shovel Knight Pocket Dungeon is a pocket fighter-esque take on the Shovel Knight kind of brand, in which you can play as different knights as you're just like going through and doing different puzzle fights, basically. That is, it's really good, especially with the way that they've built kind of like the health mechanic and the combat mechanic in that game, where it's actually quite good. So I'm really looking forward to both of them.
Cool. Yeah, it's exciting to see that Yacht Club just keeps cranking out Shovel Knight stuff and adjacent stuff, because they think they really knocked it out of the park, kind of creating Shovel Knight, and then all of the additional campaigns for that game, which are finally now done with the King of Cards and Treasure Trove being finalized. They right before all of PAX, they kind of unveiled Pocket Dungeon in their kind of Yacht Club Direct, more or less. It's cool to just see them getting to grow and take the success of Shovel Knight into other interesting and creative directions. I'm sure they're also, hard at work on a Shovel Knight 2 is probably the one of the games that they teased that they haven't announced yet. Seeing where they go with that stuff. But yeah, good for Yacht Club Games. So that'll take us on to day 4, kind of the last day of the show. We got still another handful of games to kind of dive into here. One of the ones I want to talk about that I know, Cameron, also you played, is Greak, Memories of Azur.
Yep.
It's Greek, Greak, not Eek. It's a Metroidvania game where you are controlling all of your party basically at the same time. You can swap between characters, or you can basically hold a button and move them both together. And it was an interesting little dynamic to kind of play around with there. It's a lot of solving a puzzle to needing both characters to kind of solve the puzzle. There was a lot of you got people in a pulley system of cages, and you basically need to get them both in there, and then you have somebody basically jump so that the other cage lifts to get whoever you need to get to the other area. And then they can lower a ladder or something, and both of your characters can kind of reconvene and meet back up. There's a little bit of hack and slash nature to it. Basically the two characters you have in the demo, one is kind of your thief type rogue where you can kind of do double jumps and hack and slash, and then the other one is a little bit more of a mage who can hover through the air, a la Super Mario 2 Princess Peach, and she also has a ranged attack that she can kind of cast her spells at. Interested to see kind of how the third character in that trio plays out once you get them, but really cool little art style. I've seen people kind of describing it as Child of Light in its design, and I'm like, I can see that. Not in gameplay, which Child of Light was much more of an RPG, turn-based, action RPG. But yeah, it was still a cool little game, and I enjoyed kind of my time with it and the puzzles and the design of it. How about you, Cam?
So when it comes to the design of the game, I would actually probably consider it, I would say aesthetic-wise especially, it's like Hollow Knight meets Ori and the Blind Forest.
Yeah.
It is so I'm normally not a person who enjoys games like this where you have to bounce between characters to unlock if it's a section of the game, but it really feels like a core part of the gameplay is going to be based off of these 3 characters, because I think there's up to 3 characters in it, at least from the artwork and stuff that they showed us. But really what I came away with it being this may not be a game that I personally enjoy, but I know this is a game that is really solid as far as what we saw from it. The differences between characters and how that actually is important, not just to puzzle solving, but sometimes it was more useful to stay back and just deplete my magic meter by shooting people rather than risking my low life roguelike character to try to dash in an attack or something. And there's something really nice about this world that they're building for it is fascinating. And not so much, it's there's a lot of lore here, I feel. My lore senses were tingling. But there's also something really special going on, at least with the story that it's telling.
You say that, and there was literally no lore in the game, in the gameplay. So
not in the game the gameplay we saw, but from the intro they gave us, as well as some contextual stuff. I'm feeling it, man. My lore senses are tingling.
I mean, I will give you that there's lore based on the fact that they have a tabletop RPG that they're also planning on working on.
And they already have
I'm
a
sure
board
there will
game
be
that
stuff
they're
there.
premiering.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there will be, but in that game there was nothing. You're just pulling at straws there. So I call BS on that. But the gameplay was fun. But yeah, I agree. I think the switching between characters feels a little more tedious than I'm interested in really kind of putting a ton of more time into. Yeah. So I'll need something a little bit more compelling to pull me in if I'm going to have to do that much of that in the game. But it was still fun nonetheless, and yeah, very beautiful little game. Another one I want to talk about is a game called Floppy Nights. This is one that I was drawn in initially to take a demo on this one, based on the art style of the game, because very hand drawn, kind of like cartoony, like almost like an a bizarro version of like Ren and Stimpy, but it's like way more wholesome than like Ren and Stimpy's art style is. At least that's the connection I'm making in my head. It's probably like a terrible connection, because if you're thinking Ren and Stimpy, you're thinking of the non-wholesomeness of Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it drew me in with its art style. Really cool, kind of and the gameplay is basically a tactics game, but you're controlling, or your moves and everything are dictated by cards. So it's a card-based tactics game, which is something I hadn't played before, and so I was really enjoyed my time with it. Everything's kind of based around it's the kind of thing that like it's releasing on console, but I'm sure it'll be great on mobile if it eventually comes to mobile. It's releasing on PC, but I'm sure it'll be great on mobile because it very much has some mobile elements to it, in that you like each round of combat you have a certain number of energy points that you can use, and picking and playing cards requires energy, and so like laying down a new character might require 2 pieces of energy, and then you have like another piece of energy to move your character up to 3 spaces, and then your 4th piece of energy for the turn might be attacking an opponent for however much damage that character does. You can throw on like spell effects, like you can create like a poison attack on some of your on some of your attacks and stuff like that. It's just a really cool little dynamic. I really enjoyed it. There's also just a cute and charming like sense of humor to the game. You're playing as kind of your character that's kind of like the mastermind. The controller has like a robotic AI arm that's like her companion, that's kind of helping set the strategy for all the attacks and everything. But yeah, it's really cool. I had a good time with it. It's almost like Plants vs. Zombies like in style, except that instead of zombies, you're fighting like little goblins that I think were even in the demo described as like vegan goblins that are, that's why they're attacking all these plants. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Very charming little game that I look forward to keeping my eye on in the future. And then the last one that I played that I'm in the process of working on a preview write-up for is Maneater. This made waves, but at the Game Awards. They had a trailer for Maneater that was it's the shark game, where you're basically playing an action RPG as a shark that will level up as you kind of go and like kill more things, and you're just kind of like you'll get like electric powers and hard shells and all that kind of stuff, and you can kind of customize your shark character. It's framed like The Deadliest Catch and those kinds of like reality show fishing kind of things. The main evil protagonist, basically like what you played, or what I played, was the tutorial, where you're basically playing and learning all the kind of controls, and then at the end of the tutorial, your shark gets captured, and the shark hunter basically like guts the shark, and pulls what will be your character out, the baby shark that you're going to have to then kind of like survive and basically go on a quest for vengeance. And so that was like a cool little narrative beat, that there's like a story behind this as well. And then the last little thing I want to highlight about the game, aside from just being like bonkers off the wall fun, because like I was jumping through the air onto ships and then like grabbing hunters and then like chomping down on them and thrashing them around, throwing them into each other, smacking them with my tail fin and like launching them into the air and stuff. Ton of nonsense fun, but the other little element of it that I really enjoyed is the narration throughout the game is as if you're like watching a Planet Earth kind of documentary, but instead of who is it, Richard Attenborough, who does Planet Earth or whatever, it is Chris Parnell most famously known probably for playing the dad on Rick and Morty, or for playing Cyril on Archer, or his years on SNL and stuff like that. So he's got a very dry tone to him, and he's talking about the majestic shark chomps down on a sea turtle and satiates its thirst for blood or whatever. It's just a very fun juxtaposition of tones and styles, and I'm very much looking forward to diving into that game because it was a ton of fun. Ton of bonkers, just off the wall, nonsensical fun. So that is my my take on Maneater. Let's throw it over to Frank. Did you have anything on day 4 that you wanted to talk about?
The only thing I played, like day 4 for me, was a lot of catch up on stuff that we had already kind of talked about. The only thing I had played that was new was Klang 2. I definitely would give it a shout out because it is a really cool, like completely music inspired game. Like it's a rhythm game, but they basically so it's an action game that plays like a rhythm game, I guess is basically what I'm trying to say there. Is like it gives me some Kingdom Hearts vibes where you're kind of flipping around the screen, dodging enemies, and you're fighting people, but you're not like actually doing any of that. You're just kind of hitting the button commands as they pop up, and in the sequence they pop up with, very like rhythm game style. And then the whole thing is just kind of wrapped in like a music theme, where even like the sword that like the main hero uses is one of those like tuner rods with like the two kind of like rods. So like I think like I definitely, and then the main boss that I was fighting too had like the bow it was using to shoot at me was like a harp. So like I definitely like I kind of liked all that stuff that was going on there. And this is the sequel to a game that was featured on one of the kind of funny showcases at GDC a couple years ago. So it was cool to kind of see the dev and that they've kind of released that game and then made an entire sequel and kind of refined it a little bit. So that's always cool to see.
Yeah, nice. Logan, let's throw it to you because this is where we hit your game of the show.
Yeah. So the big one for me on Sunday was, like Frank said, a lot of catch up, playing a lot of things you've talked about. And then I also have replayed Raji and Ancient Epic, which is a game I'd been wanting to play all PAX long, which just had been trying to find the moment to do it, essentially. And then finally got around to it on Sunday, and it's great. I mean, it is, like you said, it was my game of the show. It, along with kind of Artful Escape, and maybe Seasons and Fall Guys, kind of the big 4 for me by the end of PAX. And I really love Raji, which we also did record a video conversation on, me and Cameron, so you can also listen to that whenever it comes out in the ensuing week here. But Raji, I think, is special for a lot of reasons. There, I think, are strong God of War influences all over this game, and that is a good thing, I think. But the first and foremost is, I think, having a strong female Indian woman at like the heart of the story is something that is so special. Kind of sadly still so unique and so distinct, but given an outlet for a people and a culture so rich, I think, and so ripe with engaging and enthralling stories, like incorporating Indian mythology, is just so utterly fascinating, right? Like I think set in Raji in kind of an ancient India, in the world of kind of monsters and demons and gods and goddesses. Obviously, the God of War comparisons are easy and ripe, but I think whereas Kratos, especially in kind of the PS2 games, increasingly becomes this kind of cartoonish, outlandish, angry, like bro, basically, who loses kind of, I think, with each game more and more kind of his actual characterization, kind of who he is. Raji is someone who is kind of more of an understated, unsure of herself, but still unquestionably strong woman, right? And I think the back and forth you're hearing from two gods kind of actually goes on kind of her introductory journey, because it very much feels like I played what is the beginning of this game, the first like 30 minutes or so. Was engaging, draws you into that kind of world and era even more. Platforming wise, I think it's got kind of this classic God of War uncharted moments of like pulling the camera back and like showing the full like scale of what you're climbing on. I think combat-wise, I actually like it maybe a little bit more than the PS2 God of War games at the very least. I think it kind of relies on combos, but also actually like learning what certain enemies do and don't work against instead of just kind of mashing every button. It requires a bit more kind of, I think, nuance in that. But yeah, I think it's a really beautifully told story. Visually, Indian mythology, I think, is one that's so ripe with colors and kind of visual wonder. And Raji definitely incorporates that. It's by a small team, which I really dug too. I think it's like 10 people total working on the game.
That's just their art team. There's more than that in the total company, but yeah.
And it's something that I found at the very least really unique and special among what I played on PAX. Jarrett Green, again, name jumping yet again from IP, also played it. It was also his game of the show. And yeah, like his description of it, I think, is one of my favorites, where it's like, I don't know if it is the single best thing I played at all of PAX, but it unquestionably is the one with the most promise and most potential, and the one that left me wanting to know more the most. And all that kind of incorporated into why I chose it for my game of the show, why I like it so much, and why I'm excited to see what the final product looks like. It's coming out soon-ish. I mean, this year, I think May, I want to say May or June. And so yeah, I'm excited to see what it finally looks like.
Very cool. Yeah, it's definitely one I based on how both you and Jarrett talked about it. It's definitely one I want to check out. Cameron, did you play this one too?
I did, yes. Also, as a heads up, it's out second quarter for PC this year.
And PS4 and Xbox.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, out on everything. Something that I really wanted to say is that I love stories about heroes who aren't heroes just for the sake of being a hero or outside of their personal motivations. I like the idea of heroes that make the decisions to do something because if they don't, nobody else will. I think that's such a underrepresented kind of approach to storytelling for a hero, and they definitely do that with Raji. Logan hit nail on the head, like the underrepresentation in gaming media as an art form, lacking the palette of storytelling and color that Hindu mythology has, is like, it is just nonsense. Considering, like, you know, I think I was talking to somebody, I was like, you know, sure, Thor hits people with a hammer, but like a Maharaja literally fired an arrow into the sun in order to like make it explode and kill his enemies. Like, you know, they're not the same type of mythology, but there's something really special about what they're doing with this game, giving not only its representation of a young woman who's a person of color, but also of telling a story of a not just non-traditional but unconventional hero as well, and kind of her rise to becoming the hero of the story. It's very cool. Team's super nice too.
Yeah, super nice. Yeah, it's a really neat game. I'm excited to see what it looks like. I'd expect when it comes out some sort of review coverage because me and Kimon each really liked it.
Cool.
It was almost my game of the show. If Logan hadn't picked it, it would have been mine.
Yep.
Nice. Before we dive into the rest of Cameron's games, I do want to. I'll speak on behalf of Christian, who didn't play a lot, but he did like check out a lot of games, and he kind of followed around and was getting a lot of like footage for us for games, and so he definitely was in the original incarnation of this. He kind of hopped in and kind of added a little bit of notes to a lot of the games we've talked about, but. His particular game of the show that he awarded was for Disaster Report 4, so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. One of the things I think that really jumped out at Christian is it's very much a Tokyo, Japan kind of setting, and you're basically playing like disaster recovery and disaster like assistance personnel, and one of the things that we talked about, I think, as he kind of talked that we kind of stumbled into is like it's. A lot of us are fans of My Hero Academia, and it's basically trying to be the non like fighting your villains side of being a hero. It is the like more mundane, saving the people who are trapped in a building or whatnot, keeping people's stress levels low, all that kind of like management of hero work, but here in kind of a more basic, you're just kind of the person working the disaster form. So I think that's one of the things that really jumped out at him, and I think he just also loves obviously the setting of Japan, given his background and love of all things Japan, all things anime, all that kind of stuff. The thing that jumped out at me is when he brought this out, is like, this is the game he wanted to celebrate an award, was it's a game that actually came out in Japan in 2018. And it's only just now finally getting kind of a Western port. Here, comes out in about a month, April 7th, 2020, on consoles. So yeah, it was just it is certainly a game I would not have heard of. I think as we discovered when we went to like hand out the award, like none of us had really been to the NIS kind of booth where it was being shown off. As evidence from the fact that we had to kind of walk around the show floor until we found it again. But yeah, it was just a cool little thing that really spoke to Christian, and he wanted to celebrate. So I wanted to give a little shout out to Disaster Report 4 on behalf of Pixel Brave Christian, our excellent photographer and documentarian extraordinaire. Since didn't really feel necessary to pull him into this rehash of an episode. For the minimal amount of games he actually got to go hands-on or spend time with. But wanted to give that one some love on his behalf. So Cameron, take us home with the rest of your Day 4 games.
Sure. So the rest of my games were, I played Spiritfarer for the first time. I think that was available at PAX West for some folks.
Yeah, I'd played at PAX West.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it. Very beautiful art style. I love and very wonderful story that I very much look forward to seeing more of. But yeah, since I'd already played it, I was like, oh, I don't need to sit down and play the demo again, basically.
So a little tidbit. It's being put out by Thunder Lotus. PlayStation Experience 2016. One of the first games I went to was this little tiny corner booth from Thunder Lotus, and it was a game called Sundered, and that game still is it's still up there for me as aesthetically such an incredible game, where it uses this like apocalyptic level of like eldritch horror, and like boss fights are like something from like some crazy concept like heavy metal album level of stuff, and so I was super high on that. I loved the game when it came out, and this as a follow-up to like such a action-oriented Metroidvania game, Spiritfarer is this super comfy, lovable, like loving game, but it's done with the same kind of care of motion and animation of like this idea of hand-drawn feeling of movement that you're seeing on a much more personal level. And one of my favorite things about what I played is, like, towards the very end, I realized that interacting with people, you could hug them. And there is something really nice about that. About being able to have the option to hug these creatures that are temporary denizens on your boat as you are ferrying them through the final parts of their journey of life. And it is a very cool story to tell, and it's very heartfelt and warming just in the demo that I played. I liked it a lot, so I'm really looking forward to when it comes out.
Yeah, there's another one to give a shout out to our friends over at Irrational Passions. This was Alex O'Neill's kind of game of PAX that his editor's choice. He loved it. He was very moved by it. Went back and saw kind of a not necessarily like behind closed doors, but he saw like an extended developer demo of the game after the fact. So go check out Irrational Passions for his write-ups on that, because yeah, it's a very special game. I look forward to seeing more from. And then take us home with kind of your final game here, Cameron.
So I had 20 minutes left in the show, and what are you gonna see? A game that is an episodic visual novel.
This is 20 minutes left at PAX.
Yeah, 20 minutes left at PAX. Sorry, not the episode.
We're not going to spend 20 minutes talking about this game.
We have less than 20 minutes left in the show. You're fine, yeah.
Yeah, you're fine, sorry. 20 minutes left on the show floor at PAX. I stumble across this booth. really nice people working there. They're clearly giving it their all at their little independent booth. And I was like, sure, I'll try it out. And it turned out to be actually like a really well-written, fun alternative take on kind of supernatural horror. Oh, no, sorry, supernatural, like monster romance, I guess. And it's cool. It's a very well-drawn game. Like, the artwork is beautiful. It's well written, like I mentioned earlier, and it's neat. It's a really neat game that I thought, hey, I had a really nice time at their, like, a nice experience at their booth. They were super nice to me, and the game is actually interesting. So.
And this is Monstrata Fracture.
Monstrata Fracture. Thank you.
Since we didn't actually name the game.
Monstrata Fracture, from this small group of writers. It's a free game that you can play the first episode out on. I think it's not on Steam. Like it's
on itch.io.
Itch.io. So check it out. It's super cool. There you go.
Astrolore Games, the developer behind that one.
Thank you.
Cameron pulling out the weird crap at the end of PAX. not crap, but just like the weird games to be like, oh yeah, I also played this while we were going around, getting some final B-roll footage or whatever. He just Cameron made it his goal to play too many things at PAX.
Yes.
And then has continually chided Logan and I for telling him to stop making appointments by saying like, oh, well, I wanted to play more. It's like, you didn't have enough time to talk about the things you already played. We haven't
and make all the content. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, you haven't gotten any preview content out for any of the games you played yet.
That's a fair
because
criticism.
you played too many things.
Well, now,
that's definitely something we need to rein in or be more mindful of next time around, I think.
A big part of that also is that I spent most of my time
most of the week trying to save the episode. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. But there should be a better mix of playing stuff and then also working on the content while we're there, while it's fresh in our minds.
Yes.
And you can't do that if you're playing 30 games over the course of the week.
I mean, 22, but
I know I was rounding up for exaggeration, but 22 is also terrible. It's the kind of thing that worked fine when I was attending, not covering the show, and was like, oh, I'm just going to play something and then tweet about it, and boom, that's it. But we want to try and give a more fleshed out impressions of a lot of this stuff, and that's the trade-off of playing that many things. So we will try and better explore that dynamic next time around, Cameron.
Yes, I agree. It was too many games.
So that is the majority of what we played at PAX. There were a handful of games that kind of didn't really rise to the merit of discussion here in this second time around, because we didn't want this to go an extra hour like it had last time. But yeah, overall we played a ton of stuff at PAX. It was a great time. We had a blast, all of us. It was a great time getting to go out there, be with some of our friends in the industry that are creating stuff. I got to be on a couple panels. That was awesome and very exciting. We had some fun at various evening hangs, but then also just kind of, this was our first thing as a team together, really, where we were running back to the hotel to film one-on-one videos or watch Brink and record a podcast about it and all that stuff. And it was a great time being there with everybody. So thank you all for joining me for for PAX East 2020. Looking forward to whoever we can get out to PAX West in a few months' time. That should be a big old fun event. And between now and then, if it still happens, we'll have some kind of E3 coverage that we'll do. I don't think we'll be going to E3 at all, but we'll definitely kind of react and respond to the conferences as they happen. So that'll kind of probably be our next big event. So any final PAX thoughts anybody wants to share? Go around the table.
I think for me, as a person who's covered PAX Press the most, along with Trev, this is maybe my favorite PAX that I've been a part of. It's always weird to kind of comparing it with the first one because it is so special, but this one, I think the quality of what we have done and are going to do in terms of content, I think in terms of the games we played, I think in terms of the overall team, and just kind of the night spent bullshitting around,
spending hours talking about Star Wars.
Yeah, or I think, and at the What's Good part and everything like that, I think it might be my favorite PAX I've ever been a part of. So that's all thanks to you guys and Christian, obviously. And then I think in terms of the games played, I think it might be my favorite PAX in terms of what I played, what I saw, whether it was Season, whether it was Raji, whether it was Fall Guys. There was so much here of such a broad, I think, diverse stripe. There was so much to see, so much to do. We all played, 15 games around or more in Cameron's case. And so it was a great PAX all around. I had a lot of fun. And so good job all around, team.
Yeah, it was one of those the talking about the games that we kind of discussed in this episode. Obviously one of the big things we were going in looking forward to maybe playing would have been The Last of Us, but then Sony pulled out, and because Sony pulled out, because they would have also had a bigger presence for Doom Eternal, I think. It meant that you did. Somebody was describing. I think I was talking to like John Drake or something. And we kind of talked about how you had to dig deeper to find cool stuff on the floor without a big thing like Sony. Microsoft also wasn't there. Microsoft hasn't been going to PAXs recently. Like, I don't remember the last time I played in a Microsoft booth at a PAX. So really it was like Nintendo had Animal Crossing. They were the kind of the big thing of the show. You had Final Fantasy VII Remake there, which again got undermined and undercut by releasing the demo the day after the show. And then one of the big splashes that was out there that Frank had played, but we didn't really talk about here, was Fuser, the new game from Harmonix, where you're kind of like mixing and matching like DJ stuff. Those felt like the big 3 games of the show, really. And everything else was like, go find indies and play indie stuff. Play smaller games that you wouldn't otherwise see or experience. So I thought it was a really cool PAX vibe this year. Frank or Cameron, anything to add?
I don't have too much more to add because I definitely just like completely agree with everything kind of y'all said. Like, I do think this was an amazing PAX, and I think I played more than like any other PAX I have in the past. And I definitely think it was like a good adventure to, be out with the site and play a lot of things and get some preview coverage up. Like, I think that was really awesome. So I'm definitely looking forward to West on my end.
Yeah. I think I've definitely got some, like, especially after all the struggles we had with kind of the original recording of this. I think one of the things we will maybe try and tackle next time around will be more like daily recaps, where we're doing a shorter, like, here's what we did today, instead of trying to do it all in one go, because it is a significantly longer chunk when you're trying to cram 4 days worth of stuff into one go. And just trying to be better about managing kind of that time versus also the social time. One of the things that I talked about, I think in the first pass of this, or maybe it was in our I guess it was in our like early access monthly episode that's out there for our Patreon supporters currently, is that like I did feel bad like bringing everybody back together at the hotel room after every night, instead of going out and like hanging out and socializing and chatting with people at the Western or something like that. So trying to find still a better balance to all of this, I think is certainly my goal for West. And I think breaking the content up into smaller, more manageable chunks will
getting the content out faster in some cases too.
Yep.
Not playing 22 games.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, not playing 22 games, Cameron. Any final thoughts from you there, Cam?
Yeah. So I believe I am the person with the least amount of PAX experience, whether it's just attending or covering.
Because this was just your second one.
Yeah,
right?
this is their second PAX overall. It's been an awesome experience. I'm super glad I got to do it working with you guys. Last year I did it with Handsome Phantom, and they're just some terrific folks, and I'm super proud of the content they've been putting out this year. But I will say that like doing it with my homies, doing it with my pals, and doing it with kind of like the level of intensity that we all went into it with, loved it. I loved every aspect of this PAX being. It did feel like much more of like this independent type of PAX where no big wigs outside of Nintendo, and it felt great. Like, it was just an awesome experience. And I know I played 22 games and that's too many games, but there were so many more games that were there, and I just felt like if these many games are always at like a PAX, and people get over, and it always gets overshadowed by the Animal Crossing of that year or of that show. Like, there's so much to do at these events. If you are listening to this and you've never gone to a PAX and you think, oh, but there's so many people, lines, etc., take a leap, go to your first PAX, go to any PAX or any kind of, gaming show like this, and find those small booths, because it's there's passionate, wonderful work being done at by these people in this art form, and just experience it. It's such a great time.
Yeah, and I still, like, every PAX I go to, I don't necessarily play games, but there are a ton of games that I will like swing by and like note to myself, or I'll give like a follow on Twitter so I can keep an eye on games that I'm interested in that look appealing to me, but I'm not like I'm in a hurry, or I'm going from one thing to the next and I don't have time to sit down and play those things. Like Moving Out, I haven't played it in like 3 PAXs, but they've been there every time, and that is a game I'm very much looking forward to. Totally Reliable Delivery Service was a game that was here at this PAX that I'm interested in, but didn't have a chance to sit down with. So there are always games, like Boyfriend Dungeon's another one that I'm very much looking forward to that just didn't spend time with this time around.
I'm a backer, and I've never gone to
nice.
Check it out.
So yeah, there's those are kind of the tiers I have. I have like, these are the games I'm playing and will keep an eye on, and then here are the ones that I don't have time to play, or I don't even need to sit down and play. Like that's interesting and compelling enough visually, and just looking at like the demo reel that they've got playing or something, that I'm like, I want to keep an eye on that. I want to check that out when it comes out. So but yeah, there's no way anybody could play everything at PAX. There's just significantly too much to do at any of these shows to do that. So it's trying to find the right balance of what you want to spend your time with versus what you just want to kind of keep an eye on down the line. So yeah, it was a great PAX. Thank you all for joining me with it for it, and I think we had a great time, and we'll keep rolling out that content. We got some more, one-on-one video coverage that'll be coming out. I think there's a couple one-on-one. So like three you guys sat down and recorded some stuff while I was out getting Chipotle one night for everybody. So yeah, I think it'll be. We still have more coverage coming from PAX, so keep an eye out for all of that, as well as what we've already got up on the site. So that's going to do it for this episode. Let's go around we had a real table when we did this last time, but we got to go back to the metaphorical table for plugs. So you can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. What do you want to shout out, Cameron?
Get ready for the deluge of content, like written content, that'll be coming out from me very soon. Because now I am free to just write.
All right, great. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. What do you want to shout out, Frank?
Pretty much just like kind of, I guess the same as always, the youtube.com/thatnerdy site. There, like you kind of talked about, there's going to be a ton of awesome previews going up on there that I'm working on. So I hope people enjoy those and go check those out.
Yeah, we've already got a couple out there. The Animal Crossing and Doom Eternal ones, as of recording, I think turned out really well. So great job on those edits. And yeah, looking forward to seeing kind of how everything else plays out as well. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie. What do you want to shout out, Logan?
Yeah, you can go check out that Doom Eternal conversation that me and Jarrett did. That's already out there and published. You can also go check out in the coming days the convo that me and Cameron did on Raji and Ancient Epic, along with the one we did on Welcome to Elk. I think we might have even done one more one, but I can't remember it right now off the top of my head. And then you can go check out the one me and maybe Trevor did, if we did do one, on the Red Lantern, along with kind of the big PAX East wrap-up that I'll be doing over Red Lantern, Forest Cathedral, and Skyhill Black Mist. You can also stay tuned for the Bloodroots review, and then also I am going to be seeing Emma, so you can possibly expect a review on that. In fact, I should really be leaving very soon for that. So go be excited for all the things coming out from PAX East and beyond over at that nerdy site.
Yes, go enjoy Emma. I might also try and catch it later today or something on my end of the world. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Check out all of the stuff we've been doing on PAX. In particular, I have an Animal Crossing preview up, as well as the Wasteland 3 Stronghold Warlords preview that I talked about earlier. And probably going to try and work on a couple more here throughout the next couple days. So
I
check
would
out all
also,
that stuff. Yeah.
as an addition to my shout out, I'd also like to give a shout out to Frank in general, who in his first PAX as press has been absolutely killing the video side of things and knocking out all the edits on all the different video projects.
100%.
Absolutely. You can follow all of us and all this stuff over at That Nerdy Site. Check out thatnerdysite.com for all of this PAX coverage. We have a specific PAX tab. You can go, and that'll take you to all of the PAX stuff if you don't want it to get lost in the shuffle of all the podcasts we do as well. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, and consider supporting us over on patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. Last month, it was PAX Memories from Logan and myself. While we were in Boston, we kind of did a follow-up to that, really tackling Frank's PAX Memories, Christian's, and Cameron's, and then Logan and I added a couple more from this PAX to that list. So go check out that if you are a patron or if you want to support us on
really
Patreon.
great podcast.
$1 and above, you can get access to that before it comes out later at the end of March. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.